My daughter-in-law smiled so sweetly when she suggested I move into the garage, telling me it was the best solution for the whole family. What she didn't know was that tomorrow she'd be the one frantically calling me, begging for an explanation about the sold sign planted right in front of the house she'd always dreamed of. My name is Vivian DeVero. I'm 72 years old, and this is the story of what happens when you push a woman too far. Go ahead and hit that like button and subscribe, because you'll want to see how this final act plays out. Trust me, it's got more drama than any show on Broadway. Lauren, my daughter-in-law, has always been a brilliant director. She has a natural gift for arranging everything, from the angle of a flower vase to the expression on someone's face, to create the perfect scene. The only thing is, she confused life with the stage, and her biggest mistake was miscasting the lead. I sit here now in the quiet of my penthouse, overlooking the sparkling Savannah River, swirling a cold martini, and I can see the whole play unfold with perfect clarity. 18 months ago, that play began when the doors of my old home opened to welcome my son Todd's family. That house, with its sweeping porch and old oaks draped in Spanish moss, wasn't just property, it was my soul. My husband Michael and I bought it when it was just a decaying relic. We poured our sweat, our love, and every dollar we earned from Broadway into it, turning it into a Savannah gem. Every scratch on the oak floors is a memory. The walls of the library still faintly smell of Michael's pipe tobacco. It was where I raised Todd, where I took shelter after Michael passed, my fortress. Todd and Lauren arrived with my two granddaughters, Olivia and Sophia, with a reason that would soften any mother's heart. Todd's documentary film work wasn't going well. Lauren, a lifestyle blogger, needed a boost for her career. And most importantly, they said, "We're worried about you, Mom, all alone in this big house." I, Vivian DeVero, a 72-year-old widow, believed that last part. I thought, what could be more wonderful than having the house filled with the laughter of my grandchildren again? I forgot a fundamental rule of the theater. Always read the script before you accept the part. From the very first few weeks, my home became the main stage for Lauren's Savannah DeVero Life blog channel. And I, Vivian DeVero, a former Tony-nominated actress, became her unpaid supporting character. Every candid moment was meticulously staged. I remember that first afternoon like it was yesterday. Lauren brought out a fragrant pumpkin pie. "Mom, could you sit right here, hold this slice, and look out at the garden? The afternoon light is just perfect." I smiled and did as I was told. Lauren raised her phone and the click-click sound followed. That evening, the photo appeared online with the caption, "Learning Grandma Vivian's heirloom pumpkin pie recipe. Nothing beats family love and flavor." I stared at the screen. That pie was bought from the Lady and Sons bakery downtown. I hate baking, and the whole family knows it. But through Lauren's lens, I became a gentle grandmother, the keeper on generational culinary secrets. Thousands of likes, hundreds of admiring comments. "Your family is so perfect. I wish I had a grandmother like that." A chill ran down my spine. I wasn't a grandmother in their eyes. I was an idea, a polished image for sale. The play continued. Some days, Lauren would place a ball of yarn and knitting needles in my hands, then have Olivia sit beside me by the fire with a book. "Lean your head on Grandma's shoulder, sweetie. Yes, that looks more loving," she'd whisper, directing from just off camera. Poor Olivia, 15 years old, looked tired and bored, but she did it. The look she gave me was a silent apology. We were both actors in her mother's production. I became Grandma who knits, Grandma who tells fairy tales, Grandma who tends the rose garden. They were all pre-written roles, and I played them reluctantly, for Todd, for my granddaughters. Lauren's suggestions soon became rules. The breaking point came one Thursday night, a night I will never forget. It was my monthly poker night. Beatrice and Arthur, old friends from my theater days, had come over. We're a loud bunch. We laugh hard. We tell bawdy stories about our youth in New York. That's our atmosphere, our truth. Lauren kept walking through the living room, a smile on her face but ice in her eyes. Could you all keep it down just a little? The girls are studying. She said it in a sickly sweet voice, but the message was clear. You are a nuisance. The joyful mood deflated. Beatrice, never one to mince words, glared at her retreating back and muttered, "Who does that little thing think she is?" After they left, I went to get a glass of water and overheard Lauren talking to Todd in the kitchen. Her voice was no longer sweet, it was sharp and cold. "I can't believe it, Todd. Those friends of your mother's, they're so unrefined, loud and crass. I can't have her image ruined by people like that. They don't fit our brand." Brand. I stood frozen behind the door. My friends, the people who had walked with me through life's highs and lows, were now a threat to my daughter-in-law's brand. I wasn't his mother. I was his mother in a story she was telling. It felt like a hand was squeezing my heart. That was the first time I realized I wasn't just a supporting character. I was becoming a prisoner in my own home. The invasion of my privacy became more blatant. Lauren started entering my bedroom without knocking, a room even Michael always knocked on. "Mom, I'm just rearranging a few things for better feng shui," she'd say, holding Michael's silver comb and placing it at a different angle to look better in a photo. That comb, our 30th anniversary gift, was now just a prop. "Lauren, this is my private room," I said, trying to keep my voice calm. She turned, beaming, the smile of someone who hadn't heard a word I said. "I know, sweetie, but just for a little bit, to get the perfect lighting for a timeless vanity shot. My followers will love it." I looked at her, and for the first time, I felt a real, creeping fear. The fear of someone realizing they are losing control, not just of their house, but of their own life story. I thought that was the limit. I thought I could endure the annoyance out of love for my son and grandchildren. But I was wrong. That was only the overture. The main performance, the cruelest act, had not yet begun. For the next few months, I lived in a state that only veteran actors truly understand, waiting in the wings. I knew my role, I knew my lines, but I didn't know when the director would spring the climax on me. I learned to smile when Lauren's camera was on me, to say meaningless things about the weather when she was recording authentic family moments. I became an expert at hiding things. I hid my contempt behind a grandmotherly smile, my anger behind a calm silence. I had turned my home into a stage, and I, myself, had become the audience to my own slow downfall. The boost Lauren had been hoping for finally arrived on an April evening when the azaleas in my garden were in heartbreakingly beautiful bloom. Lauren and Todd called a family meeting in the living room. Their faces were unusually bright, their excitement barely contained. Even the girls were told to sit down, looking as confused as if they were about to hear a major announcement. "Amazing news," Lauren chirped, clasping her hands together. "A production company in Atlanta, Fly on the Wall Productions, they love the channel. They said we have authenticity and an inspiring story. They want to turn our lives into a reality TV series." She paused, waiting for my reaction. I just raised an eyebrow slightly. Todd, my son, picked up, his voice trembling a little with excitement. "The working title is The Devereaux Dynasty, Mom. They think the story of 3 generations living under one roof in Savannah has huge appeal. This is the opportunity of a lifetime, Mom." Lauren took my hand, her eyes shining. "And Mom, you're a huge part of it. They love your image, the retired Broadway artist, the matriarch who holds the soul of the family." She said the words so smoothly, as if she'd rehearsed them 100 times. And the premiere episode couldn't be more perfect. Grandma's cottage renovation project.
A cold dread. That was the only thing I felt wash over me. "We're going to spend $50,000, she continued, completely missing the shift in my demeanor, "to turn the garage into a fairy tale retreat for you. Think about it, Mom. It'll be such a moving story about family love, about caring for our elders. The audience will cry happy tears." I looked at her. She wasn't just talking about a construction project. She was exiling me from my own living space and turning it into a pilot episode to sell to the world. I looked over at Todd, my son. He avoided my gaze, staring down at the Persian rug his father had spent a month choosing. He knew. He knew it was wrong, but his cowardice and ambition had won. "What do you think, Mom?" Lauren asked, her smile never faltering. I took a deep breath, summoning all my years of stage training. I smiled gently. "It sounds like a very big project." A few days later, Todd found me in the library. He looked nervous. He placed a thick stack of papers on Michael's mahogany desk. "Mom, these are just a few procedural papers," he mumbled. "Since you own the house, the production company needs your signature on a location release. It's just to allow filming in the house, nothing major." "Nothing major," I repeated, picking up the stack. It felt ominously heavy. "I'll read it over. You know me. Old habits die hard. I always read what I sign." That night, long after the house was quiet, I sat in the library. The silence seemed to scream at me. I put on my reading glasses, switched on the emerald green desk lamp, and began to read. Line by line, word by word. I've signed hundreds of contracts in my career, from bit parts to major Broadway runs. I know how to spot the traps hidden in the legalese. And what I read that night was more villainous than any character I'd ever played. The trap wasn't in the obvious clauses. It was in the fine print, the cleverly inserted industry jargon. Section 4A, Image Rights. The property owner agrees to transfer exclusive, perpetual, and worldwide rights to the use of the property's image, both interior and exterior, to the production company, applicable across all current and future media platforms. My heart skipped a beat. Exclusive. That meant if I wanted an architectural magazine to photograph my garden, I couldn't. Perpetual. That meant even after I was dead and gone and the house was sold, some faceless company would still own the rights to its image. They wanted to own my home's past and its future. I turned the page, and this is when I felt my breath catch in my throat. Section 5.C, Life Rights. By signing, resident family members, including Vivian Devereaux, agree to grant the rights to portray their life stories for use in the script. The producer has the full right to dramatize these events to suit the creative needs of the program. Dramatize. The word danced before my eyes. As an actress, I understood its weight better than anyone. Dramatize means to distort, to embellish, to invent. They didn't just want my house, they wanted my life. They wanted the right to tell my story however they saw fit. They could invent an illness for me to create drama. They could create fake conflicts between me and my granddaughters to get tears from the audience. They could turn me into a senile, difficult old woman who needed to be saved by their phony love. They were stripping me of the right to be myself, turning me into a fictional character in my own life. I shakily turned to the last relevant page. Section 7.B, Renovation Rights. The owner agrees to allow the producer to make structural and decorative changes to the property to serve production needs following consultation with the owner. Consultation, a harmless-sounding word that was a bald-faced lie. In the legal world, consultation doesn't mean permission, it means notification. They could repaint the silk wallpaper Michael had custom ordered from Italy. They could cut down the magnolia tree I planted when Todd was born, all to serve production needs. I closed the contract. My hands were ice cold. This wasn't a filming agreement. This was a deal to sell my soul. And my son, my daughter-in-law, had placed it in front of me, hoping I'd sign without reading, hoping that a mother's love would blind a woman's wisdom. This betrayal hurt more than any tragedy I had ever performed, because this was real life, and the role of a mother stabbed in the back by the very child she adored was one I was never prepared to play. The next morning, I smiled at Lauren. "I've looked over the contract. It's a lot of complicated legal terms. I'm just going to have my lawyer look it over, to be safe." She beamed. "Of course, Mom. You take your time." She thought victory was in her grasp.
But I didn't call my lawyer. I picked up my phone, scrolled through my contacts, and stopped at a name I hadn't called in years. Nina Shapiro, the esteemed journalist from the New York Times who wrote a profound review of my final performance. She was retired now, writing a column on untold stories. I pressed the call button. "Nina," I said when she answered, my voice calm and clear. "It's Vivian Devereaux. I have a story for you. No, let me rephrase that. I have one final performance, and you're going to have a front row seat." The next 2 weeks passed in a deceptive, eerie calm. I played the part of the slightly hesitant but ultimately agreeable mother. I discussed paint colors for the garage cottage with Lauren, asked Todd's opinion on furniture placement. They, in their blind excitement, believed I was slowly accepting the role they had written for me. They had no idea that backstage I was preparing for a spectacular coup. I made 2 critical phone calls. The first was to Paul Fazio, a top real estate developer in Savannah. Paul was a huge theater fan and had often expressed his admiration for my home. "Paul," I said, "I'm considering selling my jewel." There was a stunned silence on the other end. Then he said, "Vivian, are you serious? I'll set up a meeting immediately." The second call was to a high-end moving and storage company. I told them to be on standby for a discreet and rapid relocation. I quietly began packing what truly mattered: Michael's letters, old photo albums, my annotated scripts, and the silver comb. Those were my legacy, not props. The day Nina Shapiro arrived, Lauren had turned my living room into a film set. She'd placed vases of pristine white peonies everywhere. She had the girls wear cream-colored dresses and sit naturally, reading in a corner. Todd paced back and forth, nervously adjusting his tie. They thought this was a major interview to promote their upcoming show, a chance to solidify the family brand. Nina, a sharp woman with silver hair and intelligent eyes, walked in. She was professional in her greetings, but when she shook my hand, she gave it a firm squeeze, a silent signal that she understood and was ready. The interview started smoothly, just as they expected. Nina asked about my Broadway career, about life in Savannah. Lauren and Todd repeatedly interjected, adding glossy details about family traditions and multi-generational bonding. Then, as we had agreed, Nina pivoted. "Vivian, it sounds like your family is wonderfully close. I hear you're about to start a new chapter in your life with a lovely new living space." That was it. My cue. Lauren jumped at the chance, her voice dripping with false pride. "Oh yes, we're just thrilled to be able to create a private retreat for Mom. She's worked so hard her whole life. It's time for her to rest. It's a project born from our love." I smiled, a smile I'd spent years perfecting on the stage, one that could hide anything. I gently cut her off. "Yes, my children have a very detailed plan." I turned to Nina, but my eyes swept over Todd and Lauren. My voice, no longer the gentle mother's, but the clear, projecting voice of a leading lady, filled the room. But perhaps plan isn't the right word. It's more of a script. The change in my tone silenced the room. Lauren and Todd looked at me, a flicker of confusion in their eyes. I slowly stood, walked to my antique secretary desk, and picked up the contract.
Lauren, you say this project comes from love, so let's see how that love is defined on paper, shall we? I held up the contract. You want the rights to portray my life story, don't you? The right to dramatize it? Fine, let's start the dramatization right now. I looked directly at Lauren, my eyes unflinching. Tell me, Lauren, in your script, what illness will I have? Dementia, perhaps? Or am I a difficult old woman who needs to be saved by your loving care? Which role would earn you the most from sponsors? Lauren's face went white. Mom, what are you talking about? I'm talking about Section 5.c, I replied, my voice like steel. And I'm talking about Section 4.a, where you want exclusive and perpetual rights to this home's image. You don't just want to move me to the garage. You want to own my past and sell it as your asset. You want to sell the soul of this house and the soul of your mother. Todd stammered, Mom, that's just standard legal language. Standard. I let out a short, bitter laugh. Todd, your father and I built our careers on a respect for words, for the script. Don't insult my intelligence by telling me this is standard. This is a contract for a hostile takeover, and you put it in front of me, hoping I was too old, too frail to read it. Nina's camera was still rolling, capturing every moment. Lauren's look of horror, the shame and guilt washing over Todd's face. My granddaughters sat in the corner, their eyes wide, witnessing a drama they'd never seen on their mother's YT channel. Lauren's face was ashen. Mom, what are you saying? Those are just template clauses. It's just so the show has flexibility. We never meant any of that. Todd rushed forward, trying to smooth things over. She's right, Mom. It's all just for the story. We were never going to actually move you into the barrage. It was just an idea for the first episode to hook the audience. We love you. You love me? A laugh escaped my lips, but it held no joy. It was dry and full of bitterness. Your love sounds fascinating. It comes with a script and a story arc. I walked slowly to the old cherrywood cabinet where I kept my vinyl records. But this time, I didn't pull out Frank Sinatra. I pulled out a tiny digital audio recorder. I'd bought it a few weeks ago, after the night I overheard their conversation about my friends. I discreetly placed it under the dining table where they often sat after dinner for their business meetings. An actor's intuition told me the most honest lines are spoken when people think no one is listening. You say it was just a script? I said, placing the recorder on the coffee table. Then let's listen to your script meeting from last Tuesday night. I'm sure Nina and her camera will find it very interesting. I pressed play. The silence of the room was shattered by Lauren's own voice, crisp and calculating, coming from the tiny speaker. Lauren's voice from recorder. Don't you get it, Todd? This contract is the key. Once she signs it, we don't just have filming rights. We have the right to tell the story our way. The garage cottage is just step one. Todd's voice from recorder. Hesitant. I still feel like it's a bit much, Lauren. Much? It's a perfect plan. We'll film her moving into the cottage, make it look so touching. The audience will adore us. Then we start planting the seeds. Mom's been misplacing her keys a lot lately. Mom seems a little confused about the date. Slowly, we build the narrative that she's not sharp enough to live on her own anymore. And then what? And then, Todd, comes the highest-rated episode of the season. We film the heartbreaking decision to move her into a high-end assisted living facility. Tears, hugs, promises to visit every day. It'll go viral. Everyone will praise us as the dutiful children who did everything for their mother. And most importantly, Once she's been deemed incompetent, with power of attorney in our hands, we'll have full control of this house and the entire estate. We get the money and the fame. It's a perfect win-win. I pressed stop. The room was as silent as a tomb. Even Nina Chaparro, the veteran journalist, looked stunned. Lauren stood frozen, her face having moved past white to a sickly gray. Todd staggered, as if he'd been struck, grabbing the back of a chair to keep himself upright. I looked at my 2 children, these 2 strangers standing in my living room. Was that just for the story, too, Todd? I asked, my voice now completely devoid of emotion. That highest-rated episode, was that part of your standard legal language clause?
Todd couldn't answer. He just shook his head, his mouth hanging open, unable to form words. Lauren, for the first time since I'd known her, had lost all her composure. She was trembling. Just then, the doorbell rang. Todd jumped. "Who is that?" "That must be the supporting cast," I said, and went to open the door. Paul Fazio and his lawyer stepped inside. "Vivian, it's wonderful to see you," Paul said, extending his hand. "Paul, thank you for being on time." I turned back to the living room, where Lauren and Todd stood like 2 pillars of salt. "Kids, I'd like you to meet Mr. Paul Fazio. He's the new owner of this house." The silence was absolute. It was so heavy you could feel it. Sold the house," Lauren whispered, her voice cracking. "You can't. The TV show, the contract." "What TV show, Lauren?" I asked. "The one where you were going to turn me into a tragic character for profit? The one where you were going to sell out this house? You should have read your own contract. It's only valid if the property owner signs, and I will never sign." I turned to Paul. "Mr. Fazio, I believe we can begin the handover process. The current residents will have 30 days to vacate, as per the law." Nina's article, titled "Vivian Devereaux's Final Performance When Life Becomes Exploitation," along with the authenticated audio clip, created a seismic shockwave. It wasn't just another exposé. It was an indictment of the greed and cruelty that hides behind the sweet facade of social media. Lauren and Todd didn't just lose their careers. They lost their public identity. I wasn't there to see the fallout. Right after the papers were signed, the moving truck I'd arranged for arrived. Within a few hours, everything that was mine was gone. I've started my own channel on that video platform. It's called Backstage. I don't stage a thing. I just sit in Michael's old armchair with a cup of tea and tell the real stories of my life, of the highs and lows of Broadway. My channel doesn't have millions of followers like Lauren's once did, but the people who watch, they come for the truth. They're my audience, not my customers. Once in a while, Olivia, my older granddaughter, calls me. Her voice is sad. She tells me her parents are struggling, that they had to rent a small apartment in the suburbs. I listen. I tell her that I still love her, but I don't offer to help. The greatest lesson I can teach my family now is about consequences. I spent my entire life performing on a stage. I refuse to spend my final years as a supporting character in someone else's bad play. The greatest stage, my dears, isn't the one with the brightest lights. It's the one where you get to be yourself, where you write your own lines. And finally, after all this, I have my stage back.